Welcome to Session 8 of the Getting Started series. I'm John Townsend.
Kevin Carter.
And this one is titled, what was it titled again?
Polish and Perfect.
Polish and Perfect.
Or Rinse and Repeat.
Right.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
which, this is all about just getting a little bit better, because we're never finished. We're never finished with our persona. We haven't perfected it. Before we get to that, though, let's review really quickly.
Yeah, actually, John, you say we're never finished. Well, we are kind of wrapping up the series.
No, we're not. We're never finished.
Okay.
It's always
all right,
a little bit better. So, Session 1 was all about taking the leap. We know you're interested. You're interested in doing this thing. So you've already taken the first step. You're already on the road. You can't stop now.
Right. Yeah. Often the biggest barrier for people who are kind of riding the fence is just believing that they can do it.
Right. Because you can. You can definitely do this. Mm-hmm. Many people have done it before you.
And Session 2 is getting connected.
Right. Getting connected with a mentor, getting connected with a group.
And doing that can reduce your learning curve. All sorts of resources and opportunities can open up to you.
Maybe you connect with a historic site. Any one of those kinds of things will speed up the process.
You know, John, since we have started this series, I've talked to a surprising number of people who are either really experienced interpreters or even professionals who started by volunteering at a historic site.
Yeah. It's funny. And usually it's just one day and they were hooked. They were ready to do it. Session 3 is choosing your persona. This is focusing. We really want to focus in on a time period, on a particular person. And the more you focus, the easier it's going to be.
Yeah, we gave people a lot of advice on how to go about selecting your persona and staying flexible with that, because your persona is likely going to change the longer you stay with living history.
Session 4, doing the research. And we covered lots of different methods for doing kinds of research. And we only covered, basically a few. There's more out there. There's lots of interesting ways that you can do your research.
Right, primary, secondary, and experiential research. Yeah. Session 5, build your outer person. And our biggest advice for everyone was resist the temptation to go out and buy everything you think you're going to need.
Especially all the pretty stuff.
Right. And to get creative with your outer person, the clothing and your equipment. Especially if you're part of a group, ask if you can borrow things to try them out, or build your own. Brew. I think we called it brew your own. And of course, then there's buying. That is how we stay in business. That's how we produce these videos. Is we sell supplies and clothing.
But we don't want you to get things that you don't need or that aren't right.
Right.
And so that's what this is all about, making sure you are getting the right things for your outer person. But that's just your outer person. Session 6 is doing it. Really, once you get some stuff, you really need to start going out to events or different settings so that you can start to learn what you need to learn.
Session 7, we divided that up into two parts. The first part, it's called building your inner person. And the first part, we really focused on just going beyond the skin deep, looking at how the circumstances of your persona and his or her experiences would affect the way he views the world. And we talked quite a bit about some pretty lofty things, worldview and things like that. Understanding how your persona's worldview would have differed from your own worldview.
Session 7, Part 2, we split off. That was still on the inner person, but finding the right depiction that's right for you. We talked a lot about first person and third person there. There's so much there to grasp about what's going on with the inner person. And I think that's so important, because the outer man, that's pretty simple stuff in a lot of ways. That inner man, that's how to really, really get it good.
Yeah, really enjoyed having Frank and Carol Jarbeau with us for those sessions.
For that.
Yeah. So Session 8, polish and perfect.
Right. We're all about getting better. and we are all on a journey. We don't ever get finished. So what we've got here are 30 different ways that we can help refine our personas, 30 different techniques. Maybe there's 31, maybe there's 29, something like that.
I think we worked it out to 30.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we have 30 different ideas about how to get just a little bit better. And this session is going to be really good even for those of us who've been doing it for a while. Little interesting ways that we can think about what we're doing just a little bit differently.
So start us off with number 1.
Look at your persona through other people's eyes. So ask other people about what they think about what you're doing, whether that's public or other people, other reenactors, or whoever you're working with. Get their feedback about getting better at what you're doing. You definitely want to reach out and be accepting of that critique. And when you give other people, critiques, be gentle.
The second point number 2 would be look beyond your group. Look for people who are doing the same type of persona that you are, and reach out and connect with them and interact with them and again ask them, what can I be doing better?
Right.
And ask them questions about what they're doing.
Right. Even if they're outside of your geographical area, definitely connect with those folks. Refining your kit. Look for one piece of equipment, maybe the piece that maybe embarrasses you the most, and make that one better. Don't concentrate on everything at once. That's too hard to do. But one little thing that you can do better might not cost very much too. It's like, oh, I need to change the buttons on my waistcoat because these aren't quite right. I need a different button, But one little thing at a time.
Yeah, and along with that, try to make an item that is associated with your persona.
Right, especially if it's your persona's skill that they should know how to make a particular thing. So interact with the public and learn from their questions. There is no dumb question, and I say that because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Okay, we know so many things about what we do.
Say that again.
Right, that we don't understand what other people don't know. It's kind of weird, but
you might have to go back and play the video over again to get that point, but yes.
Really, we don't know what we don't know sometimes. And especially if you're a different generation. Younger kids today, they have not grown up with the same information we had when you and I were children. So they've got some very interesting questions you would not believe.
Number 6, look for common misperceptions that you may be holding on to, or items that you have that you think are correct but might not be. And this really gets down to always, questioning and not doubting necessarily, but more curiosity.
Right.
Let curiosity drive you further into the research. A common, we were talking about this earlier, and you mentioned a common misperception. I think is a really good example of that.
Was it the clothing color?
Yeah.
Sometimes it comes through the public or other reenactors where people will think everyone wore, brown. That brown was the only possible color that their clothes were, which, we know is not true. They had amazing colors. Now, certain people, might not have had, the ability to get bright colors, but it was very available. The other thing is this cuts both ways. You'll have people that come up to you and they'll question some particular part of your kit. Number one, if you find something that, it's like, well, everybody's using this and they really should be using something else. Correct them gently. Don't be a jerk about it and tell everyone that they're wrong. But learn the best way to approach those people. But when they approach you about something, because sometimes you're going to be on the other side of the fence, right? It's
right.
Oh gosh, I've been using this kind of knife all this time, and it turns out that they probably wouldn't have had this kind of knife. Accept those things, research those things, be willing to take that critique.
Number 7, John. I think it's your turn.
It's my turn. Okay. Look for major ideas that your persona would think differently about. Okay, so we live, I mean, our worldview and the knowledge that we have about scientific things and, the why, we know so much about the why of particular things. They may not have known about the why. But we also have to look for these very false common misperceptions. False common misperceptions? Too many there.
Like that, yeah.
We have to look for these common misperceptions that we have about their lack of knowledge also.
They were not idiots.
Yes, they were not idiots. In fact, in some ways, they were smarter about some things than we are.
Right.
So definitely watch out for those things. And be looking for that, especially while you're reading through other kinds of material. And, it's like, wait a minute, they did know about this particular thing, and I thought they were dumb about it all along, or they knew about it completely wrong. Like where the bubbles come from in brewing. You're brewing beer, and all these, bubbles are coming up with your foaming glass of beer. And what did they think that was?
Oh, well, they actually thought it was the heat transferring through the side,
Right.
the
Right,
metal of the pot.
Fire going through the metal of the pot. And so they had some very odd ideas, and we have to kind of understand some of that. And the common man may not have cared where those bubbles came from. He never even thought about it.
Right.
And
right.
so is like, why would I even care about where those bubbles are coming from? They're coming, and I like them. So. We have to look for those things.
Number 8, study in your off time. Now, we're not talking about like don't study at work. Well, that is a good bit of advice because you don't want to get fired. But there are seasons of downtime. The winter, for instance, up here in Indiana, not a whole lot of reenacting going on. Use those times to really focus in on your research, and that will help you learn new things, but it also keeps your momentum going and builds excitement for when you can get out there.
Yeah, during that, look, when you're doing that kind of research, find period books that deal as closely with your persona as possible. Read them slowly and imagine your persona in the book, depending on the kind of book it is. I mean, it might be a technical book, and so you're imagining your persona doing the work, or it might be a piece of fiction, and imagine what your persona would think about reading that or being being a character in that story.
Number 9.
Where does your persona get their news? Today we're on the internet all the time. That's where we get our news, and that affects the kind of news we know. In the time period for your persona, where would they have gotten their news? Was it regional? Was it local? What did they think about that news? There's a lot to kind of understand about what a person knows by knowing where they would get their news.
Number 10, what should your persona sound like? Now, this can be kind of tricky. In developing your persona, the character that you select may have a particular ethnic background. The problem, though, is that modern accents may not be the same as period accents.
Yeah, this is two different. Again, it kind of cuts both ways. I mean, is it better to do an accent that might be more modern, but at least it's different than what we're doing, our everyday speech? Or should we really work hard, and we should try, if possible, to figure out what that period accent would have been like? But at least we can get a start.
Yeah, and that in and of itself is a journey. You can start with a modern accent. And a great way to do that, John, is you go to YouTube and you type in the search window how to speak with a German accent.
Right.
And you will typically find dozens of videos where people give you hints. This vowel or this consonant, they turn it into this, and a lot of helpful hints out there where you can learn from other people and practice your
There's
your
another
accent.
trick, and it won't be as easy as that, is to look for someone of that ethnicity on YouTube speaking English trying to explain something. And you will get their accent through that. So you see how they would talk differently.
Oh, and along with that too, John, don't forget about vocabulary as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to include that in point number 10 too. You can actually find period dictionaries of the common tongue, or the English dictionaries that I'm familiar with. They called it the vulgar tongue, not meaning like inappropriate talk, but
Common,
the commoner's language, and you can pick up a lot of idioms and sayings that people might have incorporated in their daily talk. Then that also brings up kind of another flip side of the coin issue, and that is be careful about interjecting modern idioms into your personas.
Right. LOL.
Nah.
Anyway, yeah, there's definitely a lot to that, and that kind of brings me to the next one, which is what would your persona think was a really good joke, and how would they deliver it? That's a little trickier to figure out. For some personas, you might be able to get some good hints from period plays. I mean, there was some like humorous plays in the time period, humorous songs sometimes, and so you get a feel for their humor. What they thought was funny maybe is a little different than what we think is funny.
Number 12, if your persona can read, try to read what they would have read or had access to.
The little bit I've done like this is really interesting. And you might even be able to find in the same way as connecting this with the news, and that is looking for period letters and seeing how they talk to each other in a letter. And of course, you can find something like, Adams's letters, his wife's letters to him, really, a different kind of speech, though. They're very formal, even in those kinds of settings. So maybe she knew everybody was going to read them later on. I don't know. Imagine or research what money means to your persona. What would they have earned in a day, in an hour, in a year, and what did the common items cost for that persona to live, for that person in time to live? And because we cannot take any of our modern assumptions back with us into those personas. The items cost entirely different things. Certain food things are going to be incredibly expensive. Certain kinds of clothing. I mean, we are just spoiled rotten with the ability to buy very inexpensive clothing. So there are certain things that in the time period they would have been enormously expensive. I mean, it's no wonder they would only have 3 shirts to their name, and today a shirt we throw shirts away every day or give them away to the Goodwill. So that's something to really kind of dig in and do the research. It can be difficult, but do your best.
Number 14. I like this one, John. Try to purchase at least one small period object or artifact to keep, to remind you and to directly connect you with your persona. What is there an item that your persona would have held?
Right. And there's some easy ones. Pocket change. You can buy 18th century half pennies, or small coinage. Everyone had a piece of small coinage at some point, but you can buy period buttons. You can buy just maybe a piece of something, a piece of an old knife or whatever. Go on eBay and dig around and find something, buttons or whatever it is. You don't necessarily want to take it with you into the field. You might lose it or whatever, but it's something to keep with you in daily life. Put it in your desk or keep it in your pocket to connect you with that persona
right
every day. So this is kind of connected with the item, and that is try to visit the location where your persona lived, or at least an environment just like that, so that you can kind of get inside their mind with the physical environment. That can be tricky because some places are not anything like what they would have been in the time period. But that's why if it isn't the exact place, you should look for an environment like that. Historic sites are great for that. Maybe you can find a historic building from that time period, from close to that locale. And then, hey, let's go in and let's sit down. Maybe you should ask them, hey, can I spend an hour? I just want to sit in here and think about what this would have been like in this setting. But excellent research.
We just spent a few days down at Prairie over in Fishers, Indiana, and they have Prairie Town there, this little collection of buildings. And you walk through the streets and you see the oxen go by and these people walking through and in their attire, and you feel like you're there. And
Right.
and you can it would be a mental exercise to put your persona in that environment.
Right. If you're looking for those and you want to get in there kind of when you're by yourself, go early in the morning or stay right up to the closing time. Or you may be able to, get some kind of alone time in a site.
Number 16 is kind of the flip side of that, and that is imagine bringing your persona into modern life. What would they have to say? What would they have to teach us about life? It's more of a mental exercise.
Right. We definitely don't want to take this into, take this exercise and apply it at an event. That's not what the events are for.
Sir, that is a strange coat you're wearing
Right.
today.
We don't want to do that, but
No.
we do want to kind of help ourselves stand outside of our modern self and think about it from the persona's view. And that's just an exercise for that. So practice at home eating some of the food that your persona would commonly eat. Now, you should definitely be doing this at an event. You should try to do this whenever possible. It's a crying shame that people eat modern food at events, except, when you got to hurry up and do something. But they really should try to stick with period food whenever possible. And you should actually stretch this into your modern life to help you connect a little bit better and understand, especially like, say, do a period breakfast for a week. Just have a beer and bread just every morning.
For breakfast.
For breakfast every morning, or oatmeal and beer or whatever. But as an experience, as an experiment too.
Number 18, at one event, try to leave everything modern in your car. Maybe take your car key along.
Right.
So
Or give it to somebody else. Or something.
Right. But your cell phone,
Yeah.
anything modern, try and leave it behind.
No flashlight, so matches, no whatever it is.
That's right.
Right. No underwear.
No lighter.
Just
no,
nothing
yeah.
like that. Just like, except for possibly toilet paper. It's the only one. And maybe you should try to find period toilet paper. I don't know.
Bum fodder.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
So that's my only caveat that I'm going to say.
But in doing so, you can
Right.
figure out what's missing
That's right.
and how you can improve your kit. And on the flip side of that, it's like, I never used that, so maybe I don't need this. So
Right. We carry so much stuff to an event. Would your persona been able to bring that to the event if they came? What would that really have looked like? There's a lot of questions that can be brought up by that one. This one is related, and it's like within your group, as an experiment, try to have just period conversations for maybe you can only do it for an hour or an afternoon, or try to do it for the entire weekend. But you would just keep your conversation and maybe even your thoughts, I don't know if you can do that, to what your persona would have actually been able to converse about and think about. That's a tricky one. And that might be difficult to do. And you might find yourself saying, what am I to talk about? And that, of course, gives you new hints. What am I missing in my ability to converse? What information did my persona need to know to be able to talk to people to not be bored. And maybe that would push us to other things like, oh, we should be playing a period card game or, whatever. There's so many places this can take you, and it keeps you off your cell phone and, doing what you should be doing.
Yeah. Here's another, this can be either a mental exercise or a practical exercise at an event. Try and think through what your persona will be doing from waking to sleeping. During the day, during the heat of the day, during the time after dark, or when the sun sets. What is your persona going to be doing at each moment, each hour of the day?
And that also includes research. We need to be researching that. I mean, we can't just imagine it, but we have to actually see if we can, get real live information on that. And that also connects with the seasons. We need seasonally, they would have been doing completely different things in the spring versus the winter. So we need to be chewing on all those thoughts, doing that research.
So that was 21. 22. Who would your persona have commonly connected with? Try to find folks doing that kind of persona and connect with them. Connect with them and engage them with your persona. The flip side of that, though, there might be some people who you would not engage with in the period. Right. Different social classes or economic classes.
And this applies both in third person and first person situations. Also, and connected with that is look for paired persona opportunities. There are times when two kinds of characters fit together and they can interact with each other. They can trade information, or they need to be trading. They need to be, working with each other. So,
Okay, so number 24. Take a picture of yourself, or have someone take a picture of you. Again, leave your camera in the car if you're at an event, or your phone. But take a picture of your persona and compare it to any period illustrations or paintings that you can find of your persona or persona type. It's a great way to kind of compare. How do I look?
Yeah.
And what can I do differently?
Am I measuring up? Yeah, definitely. And connected with that, we need to build an image bank of images of both art and artifacts from the time period and that have anything to do with our persona, and build those up in your personal library. And if possible, you should share those.
Yeah. John, you've been doing that for years now with siftingthepast.com. Where you started collecting these images and in a blog format and sharing it, putting it out there for everybody to see. Maybe a simpler version of that, though, would be Pinterest. Start a Pinterest board if there's a topic that interests you, or a piece of clothing, or a particular item or artifact that you're very interested in. Create a board, and any picture that you run across on the web.
Right. And just like I did with the blog, tag it with those basically the notes about what you find important about that image, or else you might come back to it 2 years later and it's like, what was the important part of this? It's like, no, I was interested in his pocket knife. See that? Whatever that may be in that image.
And right along with that, John, is build a digital library of the resources that you gather. Especially if you're working in Google Books, you can establish your own library with even bookshelves that are topical. I started a new bookshelf just this morning on laundry, stuff that I'm finding, 18th century laundry. I ran across a great book that gets into bleaching techniques and so, create this library, organize your materials so that you can go back to them when you need them, and share them.
Yeah, there's even beyond Google Books, there's, the Library of Congress has PDFs and the archive.org has PDFs. They're not quite as useful because they're more difficult to search within, but sometimes that's also a benefit. It makes us dig deeper into a document when you have to work hard at it. But there's so much of that stuff, and you really want to share it whenever possible. Here's an interesting one. Find a museum that either specializes in the time period or the location or the kind of persona that you're working with, and connect with that whenever possible. See if there's a person that is a specialist in what you're interested in, especially if you're trying to answer a very particular answer or a very particular question. The thing to understand about museums is that there is more museum underneath the museum than you actually see. So if you go to the museum and you just wander around the exhibits, you might see 10,000 artifacts there. But it turns out that the museum probably has 100,000 artifacts and has its own personal library. The museum has a special library, and there are people that may specialize, have a particular passion for the kinds of things you have a passion with. And those people, they more than likely would love to connect with you about their passion. And you may find some really, really interesting things there with that. So don't mistake those museums as something like, oh, I just wander through them and good enough. They're an incredible resource.
Number 28. Now this has a little controversial. Okay, watch movies with a critical eye.
Movies about the time period,
yeah,
not just anything.
Right, but notice what they're doing in the foreground and background. Notice what they're not doing. Compare mental notes and right. What am I doing? What am I doing? Not that they're always doing it right. That's not the point. And another caveat along with that too is be careful not to create or form your persona around a character that you see in a movie. Yeah, that's usually not a good idea.
I mean, there are good things and bad things about what's happening within the movies, especially the movies that have been done in the past 10 years or 20 years. They're much better than the old period movies, which were just terrible. But movies are always made to be purely entertainment, and we have to remember that when we're watching a movie. But they also do a lot of research, and there are times when you'll see something in a movie that you think, boy, they did that wrong, but maybe I better check it out and make sure. And it can lead you to some interesting things.
Right.
Number 29 is pick a person who does what you do particularly well and ask them about one thing that you want to do better. Don't be afraid to reach out to these people, just like reaching out to the museum people or other ones. If they're passionate about what they do, it's likely that they would love to connect with you on something that you're interested in too. And if you don't pester them about a million things, just choose one little item and ask them about that. I think that will lead you give you some really good connections.
And John, number 30. And this applies to whether you're using third person or first person. Write a script of what you want to say, a vignette. And if you're doing first person and your character has an accent, write it down phonetically and then practice it. If you're presenting your persona in third person, like you want to demonstrate a skill, write down an outline of the points that you want to hit, so that as you're presenting this, there'll be a nice even flow. And if you're doing first person, it gives you something to work with and to practice ahead of time. So.
Right, and even if you're doing third person, it might be an interesting intellectual exercise, figuring out what you actually know about your character and what you're missing. So those are the 30 quick ones. There's probably 300 more we could come up with if we had more time, but it's these are great little Just little ideas about how you can get a little bit deeper. We've got some more thoughts here. These are a little bit more general, and kind of sort of general advice. And that is, the first one is follow the rabbit trails.
I love rabbit trails.
You never know where they're going to lead you.
Yeah. This works especially well in research. If you're researching a topic and you see something that jumps out at you, write it down, record it, save it for later, and then don't forget it. Go back and follow that rabbit trail. You're going to find rabbit trails all along the way.
Mm-hmm. And they'll lead you to some great places. They may lead you to information that will help somebody else. So be aware of that and share that whenever possible. It's like, oh, I researched this even though I was interested, but it wasn't for me. But this, you'll love this,
Yeah. And the second thing too, general word of advice is always be curious.
That's part of this rabbit trail thing. You want to be curious about what you're doing. It'll keep leading you to some amazing information.
Yeah,
I love this. And part of this whole thing from episode 1 till now, this is about having fun. I have nothing but fun doing this, and that's, when it ceases to be fun, you should stop doing it. Or you should find the things that you like about it and do those things. And if part of it is what you don't have fun, then don't do that part of it. But have fun with this. This is how we get more and more passionate about what we're doing it and learn more, is when we're having fun at it.
And John, another general word of advice, and we've said this over and over again, and that is share what you find, whether it's through a blog or a vlog where you're taking your camera and videotaping yourself and sticking it out there on Facebook or whatever. Share what you find in your research and your experiences too. Share that with other people so that they can learn and they can offer the input that we all desire.
And even if you're too embarrassed to make it public, you should do it privately. Even if you don't want to make it public, make it private, because it will help you. You can either go back and look at it in the future, or it'll help you remember what you're doing in the present. So that it's good either way. But I would definitely, if at all possible, share it with the public. In any of the, we have so many tools today to share stuff, so do it.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier, John, too. There's a twist on this too about blogging or vlogging. You brought it up. Do it as your persona.
Yeah. So, what happens when you try to be your character and you're blogging or you're vlogging, or something you could do that's even more period is write letters as your persona to other people. It's sort of like that. If you can't do that thing at an event where your whole group tries to stay in character or at least in conversation, what would happen if you wrote letters? You can do this in your off season. Write letters as your character, and it really helps you solidify. What is the news of the day? What kinds of things would I talk about? What if you wrote a book as your character, trying to explain your craft?
Well, and another thing too is as you meet people and build those relationships, write letters to them in the off season, save them for the next event,
right?
And and send a letter to them and see
at
how
the
they
event.
at the event and see how they respond.
Yeah, the Acosta group down at the Jane Austen Festival has a letter packet. And anonymous letters are written, and then they're given to the sailors right there at the event, and they open them and read them, and they never know what's going to be in the letter.
Right.
And
it's great to watch.
Quite an interesting experience.
We were there. We watched that unfold before us, and I know of one instance where an experienced persona, an experienced interpreter, actually changed his persona because of something he received in the letter. Really interesting. So
and that I think leads us to another little point, which I don't have written down, but it is one that came to me the other day, and that is we're not done with living history. We haven't figured all of this out. We don't have all the best ways of doing this yet. The same way we're never done with our persona, living history is not done. There are new ways of delivering this, of internalizing it, of researching, of learning. And the same way the Acosta group came up with that little idea for the letters, that is an incredible tool. And there are many more techniques out there for us to learn and develop. And you might be part of that. So I really want to thank you for your interest in this. You've stuck with us this long. You're obviously very interested, and I hope that what we've done has been helpful to you in your journey in living history. And we're excited about how this is turning out and how it's helping people. I'm excited about that. I really want your feedback about how this went, how we can make this better. What your journey is like. So respond. You can either respond in this video or even better, reply to the email that you got with this session. That's really the best way. I thank you for your great interest in what we're doing, and thank you so much for watching.